feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter. Feeling like
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming to you live here from Treasure Island Resort and Casino. This is cool to see so many of you in here to drive this way out here. Give yourself a hand first. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Yeah. And then Kyle Theige, he came a lot further than you all did too. Let's hear it for Kyle. He flew in here from Portland today to do this. Kyle Theige. Cooper Carlson is here on the computer. Cooper is huge for us behind the scenes. Grateful for you here too, Cooper. The plan tonight is we're going to watch the game. Obviously, the game starts at 9 o'clock. But kind of for this half hour before the game, Kyle and I are going to go back and forth with some takeaways we have thus far from the season. And then we have a third microphone over here. If you would like to come up and ask a question, we'll kind of do that for the second half of the episode. We would love it if you would do that. We would need you to do that. That would be awesome if you could do that. But say hi, Kyle.
Again, this is really cool. When we started doing this a long time ago, if someone would have told like 18-year-old Kyle that he'd be talking about the Timberwolves at a casino, Aaron's paying me in chips, so this is really great for me. But I just appreciate everyone that comes out. It's been a tough week. Dane and I were out in Portland, some really bad losses, and I kind of hope that the questions that come from those in attendance are about that because, yeah, last year, as I said, probably 82 times. Like, we've come a long way, friends. We have not come a long way this year. They are 6-6. They are as average as it gets, but I think there's some good things to kind of talk about through the first 12 games of the season. Some things that's like, okay, are they going to address that and get it fixed moving forward?
Yeah, and I think that's when I thought about what should we talk about here is like what has surprised us about this season thus far. And I think the answer is like a lot of stuff, right? No matter how it was going to go, this was going to take a surprising sort of twist and turn because we didn't know what Julius Randle was going to look like in place of Karl Anthony Towns and Donte DiVincenzo. And really, we've learned how much this whole team's sort of landscape has evolved. So let's just kind of go back and forth with our five biggest surprise takeaways for the season. You want to start us?
I mean, my first one in my notes was Aaron. This is 21, right? Plus 21. Okay, so I can just swear whatever I want. My first note was this shit takes time. When you make a trade as big as the Knicks and the Wolves made 48 hours before media day, you have two teams in New York and in Minnesota that I think are 500, below 500 basketball teams. I think you're kind of seeing that the best thing the Wolves had last year 2 of the Rudy Gobert experiment, was continuity. And they still have a lot of the same faces, a lot of the same guys, but Donte and Julius are massive parts of this rotation. And they started out pretty well, and Donte had a great preseason, but I think you're starting to see there's a lot, especially on the defensive end, that these guys still need to get up to speed. I think there's a hierarchy question at times of like when it's not Ant, who is it next? Is it supposed to be Julius? Should it be Jaden? Is it Nas? So I think this is just, again, I know we don't always want to preach patience, but sometimes you do got to remember that they're only 12 games into an 82-game season and that maybe, I was texting you about this last night. The Dallas Mavericks were 26-23 in February. Then they make a couple trades, they get a little more continuity, and then they go win the West. So is that exactly what's going to happen with this Timberwolves team? I don't know, but I think they just need more time to kind of figure themselves out on both sides of the court.
Can you all hear? All right, gonna give you a thumbs up. Yeah, that's good. Hopefully, it's like projecting over the blackjack tables as well. Mine is related to that of it taking time, but like a little bit more specific. I think what has surprised me in the season is Donte DiVincenzo's effectiveness, given how great he was in the preseason. We go into game 1 of the year, and Dante's been making a million threes in the preseason, and we could just kind of like see and understand where Donte DiVincenzo was going to fit into this thing. And I think I tweeted at one point, I'm like, he's the second best player on the team. Well, I'm not even sure he's like the second best player off the bench right now. I think that surprised me because I was so assuming that part of the trade, I thought the Randle part would be, a little bit up and down, but that Donte DiVincenzo would be plug and play. And that just, that hasn't really been not that he's been terrible by any means, but he hasn't been a reliable in the way Nickeil has, right? That super consistent element of his game, and it probably ties to your point, which is this takes some time.
What is his ideal role on this team, in your opinion?
I mean, I think it's where you kind of similar to Nickeil, where he can play some point guard, but he doesn't have to. I think with both Nickeil and Dante, it's really important to like let them do their thing that they do great, and then add some stuff on top of that, and with and with Dante, his ideal role is volume shooter, right? And defensive sort of stalwart on the team. And I think we were talking about this in Portland a lot. Like, where is that? It seems like there's extended periods of time with Dante where you don't really feel his presence in the way that you might. So I don't know. I mean, combo guard that ideally fits when he is playing the 2 next to a lot of different guys, is playing the 3 next to a lot of different guys, and situationally can play the 1. And why it's surprising to me is because I kind of thought we were going to get that from day one.
I think sometimes we confuse being a point guard with being a playmaker. You know what I mean? Like, I look at what a point guard does and like getting everyone involved, or like sometimes just setting things up versus just making plays. I think Dante is really good at like making plays off the dribble. When he gets a guy in the air, getting in the paint, he kind of speaks French a little bit. He knows how to get those lobs to Rudy. He knows where Rudy likes to catch it. 12 games, but I don't know if like Dante DiVincenzo is like a backup point guard.
Right.
And I think that's maybe why when Mike sat out on Wednesday, you saw Nickeil spot start for him. I think Dante just needs to get back to playing. I mean, Finch's offense looked really well having a Malik Beasley type guy that just took a lot of volume threes, ran off screens, run like specific plays just for that shot. That's what they got to get. I think Dante's just thinking too much. And this whole week, he had a really tough week after a really good week last week. So he's another guy that just, I think he needs his role maybe reduced and more specific, but they really, really need him. I mean, Nas does what Nas does. He's having another 6 Man of the Year campaign. Nickeil's been great, but they really need Dante to be that, because as we talked about losing Carl and that volume of threes, that's what Dante is going to fill in, of just 8 to 10 threes a game.
Why do you think his role needs to be reduced?
I think his role needs to be more specific. Again, just like, I want you to score, and then if you are hot and you can get into the lane, feed other guys, I don't want him to bring the ball up and try to get offensive initiated. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but he has to do that if Mike is playing less, right?
We're not going to do the Dillingham thing again. People think we're fighting. So, no, I want, Mike and Nickeil has shown some chops, and maybe you mix in a little Rob. I mean, again, you're in a 48-minute game over 82-game season. Dante probably has to play a little backup point, but I just think, again, sometimes like they do with other guys, he has so much. He's like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. I need you to take those 30-footers. I need you to play like you did in the preseason a little bit, and then it'll just organically come as a playmaker and getting more guys involved.
So the reason I asked about like it going down or being more limited, I kind of think for Dante to get to where we thought he was going to be, you actually have to open up his role more and give him more opportunity, give him more chance to have like an extended spot in this. I think part of him in his head is thinking, I came to this team and I was, a starter in the playoffs on a good team last year. And now I'm coming off the bench, not even really as the 6th man for a team that's sort of middle of the pack right now. And I think by just empowering him, we know what he can do. And that was kind of my whole point when we were talking about some of the lineup stuff with Nas and Dante and Nickeil. I feel really confident that I have a better idea of what they're going to be able to give, and giving them the freedom to do that. That was a lot of my reason behind thinking it still should just be an 8-man rotation.
Can I give you another one?
Yes.
So they traded for Rudy Gobert 2.5 summers ago, and then they were clowned.
2.5 summers?
2.5 years ago, summers. And they were clowned because all of a sudden now you have 2 centers, right? And you're starting these 2 centers. The best part about that I think we forgot is that when you sat one of the centers in Rudy or Carl, you had a really good center at the 5 in those one center. This team doesn't really have or has identified or found a good backup center, in my opinion, for Rudy when Rudy sits. I don't think Julius I mean, what do you think? Can Julius be the backup 5 in those spots?
Well, it's definitely surprising. It's been surprising to me how little that's worked. That it's like, and I kind of feel dumb that we just didn't even think about this before the year of like, oh yeah, who's the backup center? Like, well, did a million different podcasts, and we never really spent time being like, how are the 20, 15 minutes a night that Rudy Gobert isn't on the floor? How is that going to work? And I think for me, part of that was I thought Julius Randle was like maybe bigger. Like maybe was more of a center, but it's almost exclusively been Naz Reid as the backup 5, and he doesn't look like a backup 5. And Julius doesn't seem to want to play any, or isn't being asked to play any backup 5 in that way. So absolutely, like, what the hell is going on at backup center has definitely been, I mean, for me too, been one of the biggest surprises.
Again, Rudy didn't have the greatest game on Wednesday against Klingon, but for the most part, as you always say, like, Rudy just doesn't let you lose a lot of those mid-opponent, bad opponent games. He obviously did against Portland, but I think that's an issue. I think, we're all focused on how many guards they have, or can Rob sneak in at a backup point, all these wings. They haven't really identified what their identity is in general, but specifically what their identity is when Rudy goes to the bench.
What do you think that's going to, if they end up figuring it out, what would be an idea of like how that comes together?
Well, I mean, with the guys they have, with the ingredients they have in the kitchen.
All right, time for us to go play poker.
Thanks everyone for coming. This was a great podcast. I mean, it has to be Julius, because you have promoted more than anyone, like, that Naz has just continued to downshift his body and his skill set to be like a wing, right? But if it's not Julius, I mean, is it Jaden? Like, that's not going to work from a rebounding standpoint. So I just think, and again, it goes back to the top of this, like, Julius and Dante are probably being asked to do completely different things that they did in New York, and it might just take them some time to figure out. But Julius Randle, for this to work, if he's on this team, short-term and long-term, I think he has to be a successful, or at least an average backup center behind Rudy.
Yeah, I think that's the difference with Julius is he isn't really doing anything different than New York, right? Like,
you're right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I thought he would. I thought he would play some backup center. I thought it would look different. To me, when I've watched Julius Randle play for the Wolves, the role has been like extremely similar to what I understood his role to be with the Knicks. Like maybe a little bit less volume or whatever, but he's just like a forward, like a point forward. That's what he was for the Knicks, and never really played center. That's what he did for the Knicks. Whereas like Dante, I feel like his role is kind of, he's been feeling his way through the dark a little bit, kind of understanding that he has to do some things differently than he was asked to do in New York. I think Julius would do well, or it would be good for the team if Julius sat down with Finch and was like, all right, what are the ways that I can fit in to the team? Because you remember when after the Lakers game, all the players were like, all right, Julius, we're going to fit in around you. And I think they did that for like a week. And then everyone's like, Ant was like, I want to be me. And everyone else kind of went back to being themselves. So I think we're now like in this full circle where, all right, Randle, you got kind of welcomed in. They let you do your thing for like 5 games. Now, how do you tweak that so you fit in better to this group? And one of the main ways would be defensively making yourself fit with Naz Reid, because that's obviously been a major weekend thus far.
This is my favorite.
Do you think that's John Krasinski or
which one from The Office?
Both.
Sexiest man alive.
Yeah, it's both of them.
Give me another one of your takeaways through 12 games.
Well, you said you didn't want to talk about the rotation, but I think in all seriousness, like a big surprise for me is how confusing it has been to play more than 8 guys. And I was kind of, we're going through, remember when we were at Summer League and I was like, all right, Shannon Jr., you win a rotation spot. Like, and we thought that was going to be a thing. Thought Rob Dillingham was going to play. Even thought Joe Ingles was going to play for a while. And honestly, didn't think Josh Minott was going to play. And now none of them really play, or like sparingly play. And I don't really understand a path towards a 9th guy playing at least a meaningful role. It just kind of feels like this little 5 minutes a night thing that they're doing. And that's maybe just surprising to me because I didn't do the math of just kind of figuring out how this would all go. Maybe it's a little bit surprising because Nickeil Alexander-Walker has really earned a lot in that 8th man role. But it's been one of the biggest topics of this whole season, right? Is like, is Rob Dillingham going to play? Stop playing Ingles, put in Josh Minott. Like that's been that those have been talking points this season and somewhat legitimate. That's been really surprising to me.
I think we're 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving, and you and I fought 48 hours ago about how I think Rob should probably play more. And then I slept on the plane, and I've changed. For the next 2 weeks, Chris Finch should play 8 guys. It should not be Rob Dillingham. It should not be Josh Minot. They get 2 weeks to see can these 8 guys find a hierarchy, find some chemistry, and then after Thanksgiving, maybe open it up a little bit. But I said this too, like I think it's more disrespectful to a guy like Josh Minot to play 90 seconds in the first half and then not play again. You can't find a rhythm. You can't do anything in that short of time, and you're trying to prove, your worth. You're trying to make the coaches proud. So go back to just the 8 guys for 2 weeks, see if they can find some sort of, harmonious play on the court. And then if it's like, okay, now we're a little closer to Christmas. Now we're 20 some games into this and it's still not working. Then I'm going to call you and be like, hey, I was right. You have to open. It's not a perfect comp, but we kept talking through January of last season. They played 9 guys and Shake Milton played almost every night. And Shake wasn't that great, but I mean, he got to play. So there's a way to do it. Is it how Finch wants to do it this year? I mean, Dante wants to play 30 minutes. Nikhil wants to play 30 minutes. So I'm back on the 8-man rotation thing for a couple weeks. And if it doesn't pay dividends, then it's time to have a real conversation about just giving another guy a chance, even if they're going to turn it over and they're going to not know what they're doing. If 20 games in the season,
I agree
some of these guys don't know what they're doing, then it's like it's time for something new.
No, I agree with that for sure. And also, like, knock on wood, but like in 2 more weeks, I might get an injury, and it kind of makes that a little bit clearer who it should be or how it should work. I think my stance on it, like we talked about, is it's pretty clear to me those are the 8 best players on the team right now. It's complicated to mix a 9th guy in. So when the time, roll with the 8 and assume that you're going to get a little bit more chemistry here, that Jaden's going to stop playing terrible, that Conley's going to stop playing terrible. And that's really the stress test, I think, for this whole thing. This whole roster is like, what does this look like once Mike Conley is actually playing basketball something like he was playing a season ago? If you get that, then like, I think a lot of this is going to make a lot more sense. But Mike's 37. That might never come. There's a possibility that never comes. And if that's the case, and we're 20 games into the season, yes, there should be some sort of change. I'm not really there yet. You got another one?
Give me one more, and then I have one to close it down. You give me one more.
Oh, I give you one more here. McDaniels struggling has really surprised me. Like it felt like I was kind of in previous seasons when Finch was like, Jaden's going to be awesome this year. We're going to give Jaden all this opportunity. I was like, I don't know. Like, doesn't seem like there's a lot of room for it. I bought into the idea that without Carl, that there would be more room for Jaden to sort of do his thing, and that, he's a year older, 24 years old. He's making $20+ million a year. He'd be ready to go ahead and do that. And I just don't think that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, this hurts. I mean, 3 weeks ago, I said that by the end of the season, he would be the 2nd best player on the team. He's probably at some point not the 5th best starter in a starting lineup. He's really struggled. The shot is the worst part, right? Because I think his defense has pretty much been there, especially this week in Portland. I thought he defended his ass off. But if he doesn't hit those shots, man, then you just become kind of like the Okogie syndrome of play great defense, but it's one-dimensional, and the league is just advanced past that. You don't see one-dimensional. I mean, the reason Nikhil had such a great season last year is because he found his jump shot. You know what I mean? And like he would sidestep and do the little dance and hit all those threes and shoot 100% in big moments. So I think Jaden's had a really bad start. I think Mike's had a really bad start. That's enough Jaden slander. I would say that my last one is Ant was 12-1 to win MVP before the season started. And this is not exactly how this works, but I don't think Anthony Edwards has been one of the 12 best players in the league right now. And I think as Coop wears an Ant jersey, he just has to be, it's year 5. I've talked about all the cool professors he's had in the league and the point guards and stuff. Like, he is one of the faces of a 30-team league. He just has to be better. And in Portland, it's okay in my mind that they shit the bed on Tuesday, but Wednesday he should have just simply said, I will not let you lose this game. And I didn't see that, and that has to start to come up.
Yeah, that's been a surprise, like the variance of how good Ant is in wins versus how mediocre he's been in losses. I think in wins thus far this season, he's shooting 48% from three, and in the losses, he's shooting 33% from three. And what that says to me more than like, oh, it's just hot shooting one night on some nights and not the other nights. It's like not having a recognition of, all right, I don't have my shot right now. I got to get downhill. And because in the losses, he's shooting 11 threes a game, and in the wins, he's shooting 12 threes a game. So it's not him changing at all the way he plays. And I think it's important that he adjusts and tweaks the way that he plays. And that's what he would be to be an MVP type player, to have the Wolves be a 1 seed in the West and to kind of have this thing be sort of reestablished as one of the elite teams, and not being special, but like consistently special, and also doing it in a very different way. Like, who saw 12 threes a game from him this season?
This isn't fair by any means, but Nikola Jokic is older and has more years under his belt and has won MVPs and stuff, and Ant's probably going to get there. But when the Nuggets early in the season stumbled and lost Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic's like, oh, I guess shit, I have to go 38, 17, and 12, right? And then Ant had 0 rebounds against the Portland Trailblazers on Tuesday night. You know what I mean? Like, that's just all the cool stuff that comes with this. Like, you gotta find another level. You have leveled up every year of your career, but you just have to find additional levels because you are the face of this. And while the other guys are struggling, you kind of got to fill all the gaps. That's what the role is now. That's what you are as a max player on a franchise.
I have one more. It's a positive one.
Oh, good. Okay.
What Julius Randle can do for the offense and how positive that can be has really, really surprised me. In a meaningful way, I think we've seen the value of his double, like when he generates a double team. And I mean, they play Sacramento in an hour. And we saw that kind of for the first time in the Sacramento game. Like he can be a bucket on his own, and he can get buckets for his teammates. And that he's able to have done that and been able to do that so quickly. I think that was surprising to me, and it also seems pretty repeatable. I don't think he played very well in these last few games, but his role is very repeatable, and I would think that would be. I think it's been a good thing. It surprised me, and I kind of expect it to continue. I know a lot of people are sort of sour. I don't really get the like Nas should start over him thing. Where are you at on that?
I just think it's a different type of guy playing the 4. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't wish former Minnesota Timberwolves great Karl-Anthony Towns a happy birthday today.
It's his birthday?
It's his birthday today, so happy birthday. Raise your glasses in the air for Karl-Anthony Towns.
This is Kat's birthday party here at Treasure Island Resort.
It's just,
Attention, Karl-Anthony Towns is here. Yeah.
It's just going to take some getting used to because they 2 Kentucky big men, but they play the game almost completely different. And I think some of Julius's playmaking reminds, like we've talked about, like of Kyle Anderson and how good things looked when Kyle played the 4 a little bit. So I just think Julius has to get back to, especially while Mike is trying to figure it out, it really helped this team for those first 8 games to have Julius lead the team in assists. Like, it really made the offense kind of click. So if nothing else tonight against the Sacramento Kings team that is going to be pretty small, it's going to be Sabonis and a bunch of guards and small wings. Get Julius back into that facilitation mode. Like, if Julius has 7 assists tonight, they're going to beat the Kings.
Right. Want to let you guys know, well, first of all, we're going to start taking questions over here. So if you have a question and you want to just kind of get us going on something, there's a mic over here. Just kind of walk around the camera, and we'll do that there. Also, they're going to have they have a bunch of giveaways Treasure Island does here. So it's like a bunch of Wolves merch, and I think maybe TI experiences and stuff like that. Do they need to sign up for the Passport Club? Okay, so if you want it, there's, I don't know where the merch and stuff went, but it is cool.
Really cool.
And so what you would need to do is, I think, go to Kiosk Cove here and sign up for a Passport Club. It's free. It's just your information. It's kind of get your player points going. And if you do that, there's it's all the, what is it called, City Edition?
It's all the new City Edition, the frozen lake thing. So we got a basketball, we got t-shirts and hats. It's actually cool stuff. I tried to take it, and then Dane yelled at me.
Yeah.
But go sign up for that. It's really easy. I already did it, and then
they got concert tickets.
For real?
Yeah. So, and they're going to be doing this kind of like throughout the game tonight. So after the first quarter, they'll do some giveaways, second quarter, third quarter, etc. So if you want to win some stuff, just go over there at some point before the game starts or whatever, and throw your name in there, and we will do that. Attention, poker players. If anybody has a question here, otherwise we can do another takeaway from you. And anybody want to do anything?
I'd much rather someone ask a question. Not all at once.
They're not. Yeah. Do another.
Or if you don't even have a question, you just want to tell me what you thought of those 2 games in Portland, I would love to know your thoughts.
Oh, you're not scared.
Warm it up for us. You may remember our friend from Falling Knife.
Yeah, it's the head brewer at Falling Knife Brewing Company right here. Yeah, Top. Yeah, you got a bigger. This is actually Kat. He's here.
What's up?
So, as we've watched Ant grow and develop over the last 5 years, it's kind of more evident now than ever watching him play up and down to other teams and kind of the bonehead things that he does. He's having a pretty solid season, but how much do you guys think like him playing up and down and like sort of the bad habits are rubbing off, especially on the new guys like Randle and DiVincenzo? Because it seems like if Ant's not having a good game, those guys aren't having a good game. And how much do you think that has to do with Ant's vibe or performance or habits? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. To me, I don't think it's the guys being like, oh, Ant isn't taking Portland seriously, so I'm not going to take Portland seriously. I just think this team goes through Ant as much as the Nuggets go through Jokic or the Celtics go through Tatum. Like, if you look at the Miami game, Ant messed up the fourth quarter. When the play where Nikhil got backdoored and they got the bad layup there at the end, that was Ant. Ant wasn't locked in there, and he made a mistake there. And then on the offensive side of the floor, he wasn't supposed to inbound the ball. The play was to Ant, and he went and inbounds the ball. And then he's so good that the things that he is doing wrong, the team will do wrong. And I think, like you said, in the first Portland game, the team didn't rebound well. Ant had 0 rebounds. He is just so connected to the success or failure of the team on a night-to-night basis because he's that good. I actually mean that as a compliment, and he's in this unique position where he hasn't really been like the guy. For being a guy who was 10-1 to win MVP this year, this is his first season where the whole entire operation runs through Ant. And I think some of that is an adjustment to him. And once fatigue he said this. He said this in the locker room in Portland. He's like, once fatigue starts setting in, so does my immaturity at times. And he said that the same thing happens to the group. So I think the glass half full on that is, all right, the Miami loss happened and the Portland losses happened in the way that they did. And Ant knows that he played a role in those losses, probably even bigger than the stat sheet would suggest. So to me, it's not like his at times lackadaisical focus is what's sinking them or anything. It's just whatever Ant does, the Wolves are going to do. If Ant makes 7 threes tonight, like, they're going to win, right? I mean, there is a momentum to him forward or backward. And I think that's part of becoming a star is learning that. You got anything on that?
I think the things that make Anthony Edwards, like being fearless, are also things that he's trying to navigate now as a leader. Because on Tuesday night in Portland, he was like, the best thing about this, we get to play him again tomorrow, whatever, they're not going to shoot like that. And he was kind of right. And then they lost again. Shameless plug for our friend Chris Hine, who's writing this book, but kind of get to know the ins and outs of what we all know Anthony Edwards for the last 5 years here. But those first 18 years were fucking crazy. And I think he's been through way more than losing back-to-back games against the Blazers, but he hasn't figured out of like, he wants to take every big shot. He's not worried about the moment. I think that's a skill in and of itself. but I think he needs to find a way to sometimes, you know what, I just lost to Portland. I don't want to let this season slip 2 months from now. I do need to be worried. I do need to care a little bit more. And like Dane said, not just on the court, but off court, everything this team does moving forward now is tied to that. He's the quarterback, right? Like when they win, it's all about the quarterback. And when they lose, it's probably going to be all about the quarterback. So, but, you know, Tatum won his first ring at like 28. And I'm not saying that Ant's going to win a ring in 5 years, but I think he's still we're still in those chapters of the book here of him trying to figure out now, like, this is it. There's no cat. There's no real professors anymore. I graduated college. Like, I need to be the leader of this team. And I think he's still kind of going through it.
And if it does click in a way, we'll look back at it, be like, oh man, remember the beginning of November?
Yeah.
You know, where Ant just like, I think there's an opportunity to have something that is learned here that sustains. And honestly, if he doesn't, they're going to probably not be as good as we expected them to be. But he's 23. And those things in my time doing this, and I've said this on the pod a couple times, like, I think much like all of us did, we flip our adult light switch on at some point in our 20s, and it's different for different people. And once Ant flips that light switch on, which is the maturity thing that he's talking about, it's going to be a game changer, I think, because there's going to be a level of locked into him. But I didn't flip my adult light switch when I was 23, you know? So
I'm 36.
Yeah.
I didn't know that light switch existed.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Tom.
Great question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just, to your point though, like, you know, in Boston, there's still, I don't want to say a debate over 1A and 1B.
Right.
You know, now it's like definitive that that Ant is the guy now that Cat is gone.
Yeah.
So for better or for worse, you got a 23-year-old now flying the plane.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
scary,
and I think exciting too. You guys got questions? Is that a line over there? Love it.
Great question.
Sweet. Thank you. There we go.
All right. Hello.
All
right. So my question kind of revolves around the overall bench unit currently. You know, a lot of conversations about the Cat trade with Dante and Randle, but I'm just curious your thoughts on the current overall kind of view of the bench unit and the losses of even like Kyle Anderson and J-Mac. Because I'm watching Kyle Anderson right now act like Klay Thompson with Golden State. So
yeah, right.
I'm just curious, your thoughts on the bench unit, the team chemistry, and like the roles that they played.
Yeah, I think it came off to everybody how big of a leadership piece Kyle Anderson was, right? Like did that came off right on the floor, and I think in the locker room it was very apparent. Like it was so similar to Patrick Beverley, where it was like clearly not the main guy on the team, but clearly the loudest voice that everybody listens to. And Kyle Anderson was totally that on this team last season. But much like Pat Bev, you know, there was limitations to his game. I think, and I probably played a role in this, I think in many ways we sort of really focused on the things that Kyle Anderson couldn't do. And I think I brushed over some of the things he really could do well. And as we were talking about before, like defensively a season ago, the Wolves were awesome defensively when Rudy Gobert was off the floor. Well, when Rudy Gobert was on the bench, who was on the floor? We always go Cat. Cat was at the 5, but Kyle Anderson was almost always at the 4 there. And I think he was such an underrated part of this whole the defense, the non-Rudy minutes, the ability to play like two different styles, one style when Rudy's on the floor and another style when he's off. A lot of guys to this day, and they've said, still don't really get that. Kyle Anderson understood how to play both different ways. And I think he knew how to explain that to his teammates. No, this is what you need to be doing. I mean, you could see him on the floor pointing, no, this is what we need from you here, Carl or Ant or whatever it might be. I think they miss him as a leader, but I'm getting to the point, given what it's kind of looked like with the bench units this year, and just it seems to me like this bench has like a Kyle Anderson sized hole on it. Though at the same time, if he was just magically on this team, like what would we be doing with the whole minutes thing too? Because we'd be like, well, you want to play Kyle, then who doesn't play? You know. Got some hats?
For sure.
Yeah.
I also think that, and God bless his soul, because he's a top 5 favorite Timberwolves. I think when Ricky Rubio was here, and then they traded him away. I was like, oh my God, what are they going to do without Ricky Rubio? And then they get Pat Bev, and they trade Pat Bev, and like, what are they going to do with Kyle Anderson? The same thing now is like they do need Joe Ingles is still a pretty important presence in that locker room of keeping things light and talking to guys and talking to younger players. Like every year you're going to lose someone.
Right.
And I think they just need to find who is their new. I mean, Mike Conley is still a big part of that locker room. So is Rudy. But we also need to talk about like all that stuff. Kyle and Pat and D'Lo and all these guys. It's when Ant and Jaden and Nas were all on like minimum contracts or like rookie scale contracts. Like now you are the guys. And maybe not all three of those guys can lead by just example. Like maybe you need to find different leadership skills in the leadership power rankings of,
right.
I mean, and I think, and you could maybe comment on this. You can at least agree. I think Nas is kind of doing that. Like you see how Nas interacts with Rob and Terrence Shannon Jr. And sometimes you don't see it because it's just in the locker room. But I think Nas is trying to fill that. I'm the longest tenured employee here on the roster.
I would agree with that.
Trying to fill more of a role. So they do miss Kyle. We all miss Kyle's. Kyle's are great. But I think Nas is a guy that could maybe start to fill some more of that role for the young guys because his teammates, all of them from 1 to 15, listen to him really well.
Yeah, I think with the Joe Ingles part, we're like, all right, you replaced Kyle Anderson with Joe Ingles. But Joe Ingles doesn't do that defensive thing that we were just talking about there. So I do think there's something missing there. Thank you for the question. Apparently we have some hats here if you ask a question, if you wanna come up here and do that.
All right. Hey, guys.
Hey, Mike.
So it feels like the defense really craters when Rudy's not on the floor.
Yep.
Outside of changing personnel, what do you think they can do to kind of reinforce the defense in those minutes?
Trade Dante and Julius for Cat.
I don't think that would work.
I don't think but this. I'm glad you brought that up because this is like the whole backup center thing. They don't have one. Like this is your question and you alone. What do you do to fix some of that stuff? Because Rudy can't play all 48, but this team needs to have that identity of playing all 48 minutes.
I think it's really – we all watched a bunch of Wolves games last year, right? And there was a way that watching the Wolves play defense felt. There was a buzz to it. They called it the fly around. Julius Randle doesn't play basketball like that. And in all seriousness, like I think what would make a huge change, specifically in that way, is imparting to Julius Randle, hey, this is how we do this defensively, and there just is, and Julius Randle, I don't think is actually a bad defender. Like there's like lackadaisical markers there. He's strong enough. He can move his feet on a switch. He is just not a dart all over the floor like Nickeil Alexander-Walker did, or Kyle Anderson would, or Jaden McDaniels does. I think if I see that from Julius Randle for like a couple of games and there is just an intention to him really moving defensively in that sort of way, I'm going to go like, all right, I kind of believe in this. I kind of believe in this defense again. But when you only have 4 players playing like that, there's a limitation.
Again, I think it has to be internal, right? Like you kind of fire a lot of your bullets in terms of like assets and transactions. It has to kind of be, I mean, we didn't, and you and I talk about this a lot, we didn't really think Carl could make this work, and then he did, and it took just a long time. I don't know if this team has 110 games, Mike, to like figure out this new twosome in the front court, but I think we probably got to give him more than 12 games, right? Because there's a lot of times you watch Julius on TV and you're like, he didn't keep an eye on his guy. He didn't have, basket and ball and his eyes on both guys. I just think maybe 10 games from now he might be. I mean, he's not going to be Rudy Gobert level defense, but that's what I said about Carl last year. It's like Carl was never defending all defensive level. He just was good enough because he knew that I have Ant and Jaden and Nickeil and Rudy. I think Julius just needs to come around to like, hey, we just need you to be good enough, average. You don't need to be great, even though we're great. Just be average, and everything will kind of work itself out.
It has to be faster. That's the thing with
half step slow.
With Randle, everything it needs to be. The Wolves play at a faster pace than he's probably, and like there's such thing as defensive pace, and I'm pretty sure he just hasn't played in a team that has a defensive pace like this. But I think it's Julius Randle is the answer there. Nas has done it before, more so at the wing though, not as a 5. So that would be the
big question, Mike.
Yes. Anybody else has a question? You get a hat.
Question or a take? Just come on up, grab the mic, grab a hat.
Let them rip. I know you're thinking something here.
Someone's coming. Here we go.
No. I think that's just like literally a White Russian drink. There we go.
No, here we go.
This guy
Yes,
right
here we go.
The most frustrating thing about watching this team is the turnovers this year. So curious to know if your thoughts are, if they are more careful with the ball, will that come at the cost of the offense but keep the turnovers down? Like, is the team capable, I guess, in your opinion, of playing good flow basketball but not turning the ball over every 3 times? Because it is the worst part about watching them this year.
I think no. I think this style of play of basketball leads to turnovers. And it's the most similar this is to me is the Golden State Warriors, like the KD Warriors played a free-flowing offense in this sort of way. I think and they were always really high turnover team. There's just an element of this when you're playing an offense that isn't scripted or predetermined, that you're making some assumptions as to where your teammates are, and that's going to lead to some of these bad turnovers. I asked Finch about the turnovers. Whenever I ask Finch about the turnovers, his answer is we probably need to add more structure into it. And I think his thought process on it is the more structure we add, we lower our ceiling offensively, but we also raise the floor. And I think he always wants to keep that ceiling sort of up there. But when they're turning it over 20 times a game, it's like, all right, man, we probably got to call some plays here, because they're just turning it over too much. Go ahead.
With that said, small sample size, but that first 12 minutes against Portland on Wednesday, they're up 33-23 at the end of one, no turnovers, right? So, again, very small sample size, but, they can do it. And, again, sometimes those turnovers are just a reflection of taking a little risk, which sometimes can lead to a high reward. But it's all kind of this giant pie of all the, you're playing 8 guys and you're playing them a little heavier minutes and they're a little fatigued, and Ant said that, and then you're not making all the smart plays, boneheaded turnovers. Rob had some. Nikhil threw an alley-oop off the shot clock. So it's all kind of a puzzle, but I do think that there is, the turnovers, you turn over 20 times a game, you're probably almost never going to win that game.
Absolutely.
And I think there's just a little more, they just got to focus more, man. They just got to lock in a little more. It sounds so cliche, but I think locking in and focusing more on attention to detail would be so big for this team.
I agree. Thank you for the question. Did you get a hat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The
Okay.
line's pretty long for questions.
Okay, so, in that same vein, with 2 new players, since you're around the team, I guess my question is, how much structure is there when 2 of your key contributors were barely there pre-training camp? Do you think all the structure is there, essentially, that they might have in 20 games, 30 games, whatever? How much structure does he have to fall back on in that sense?
Not much, because it's again, learning how the sausage is made. When you hear the term shoot around, Dane talks about shoot around. On a morning of a game, you show up to the arena and you get kind of not hungover and warmed up and get some shots up. It's not practice though. Shoot around is not practice. They don't practice much. With the league and how there's so many games, but there's all this travel, they don't. I think that's probably, if nothing else, the biggest reason why I say preach patience, because they have a window of time this week. For example, they play tonight, they play Sunday at home, and then they play Thursday and next Sunday. They're going to practice hard Monday, Tuesday. Yep. And I think you can install 5% more of your offense, some defensive concepts, but I think that might be the best question so far, just because.
No, it's a good point. It reminds me of the first Gobert season, right? Rudy comes with, you install the majority of your stuff in training camp. And then you kind of build off of that, or go maybe strip down things from there. So the first Rudy year, pretty rough, right? Well, Rudy comes off a Eurobasket, his knees hurt, and Carl has that throat infection thing or whatever. So those guys literally weren't there in training camp to install anything. They were not. Rudy was there, Carl wasn't. What wasn't a part of it. And my point is that's kind of what happened this time, where Randle and DiVincenzo are traded for right before training camp. So you don't have as much install time. think also an important thing is I'm pretty sure like Finch didn't know that they were trading Cat. He didn't. He kind of had a plan of what to install, given Karl Anthony Towns was going to be on the team. Obviously, this idea of trading Karl to the Knicks loomed out there for a while, but I think when it got to be September 28th when it traded, Finch was probably like, all right, well, we got Cat this year, and this is how we're going to play. And he's talking about adding different tweaks off of the system that they had a season ago. As we've learned, right, there's different personnel and haven't had a lot of time maybe to install as much as they did a year ago when it was the Run It Back tour or whatever, if that makes sense. Thank you for the question. We'll do a couple more here, and then also just we're excited to hang out with all you guys all night. We're going to be here. It's kind of works out perfect that the game is late this evening. Thank you again for being here. Awesome. Another question.
Yeah, what's up, guys? So my question is on Dante DiVincenzo. Obviously, he hasn't had the greatest start to the year, like you guys talked about. And I was just kind of curious if you guys had noticed anything of like why that would be. Is it like shot mechanics type thing? Obviously, is he like alligator arming it? That's what I call it anyway. Or is it just, he's got to get into the flow of it? Is it just he doesn't know? I don't know. Just anything like that.
I think just the last game's was rough, right? Like, I don't think he's been that bad.
So
go ahead.
Last week he was good. You know what I mean? Like it seemed like if you look at like his box scores, like he had 3 straight games of double-digit points, and he was doing pretty well. Like I don't know, for shout out to Prize Picks, but you would always hit the over on points, rebounds, and assists.
Sure.
And then this week was really tough. This is always the hardest thing to try to get through to people, and Dane has educated me a lot on this. But man, when you get to hang out with these guys, right, just be in the locker room, sometimes it's like you and I or anyone else in the crowd, like just overthinking, like I'm doing now in front of these people, like with imposter syndrome. Like sometimes I think Dante and Nikhil has been open about this, and like you just kind of get in your own head, and you go 1 for 10 from the field. That next night, you're like, I'm gonna still get my shots up, but if I'm like 0 for 6 to start, maybe I'm not gonna shoot as much. That was my biggest concern from Wednesdays. Right. I think Dante started turning down those like 30 footers. That was like you were just letting those rip in the preseason. So, and Finch is really good, and so is Pablo and Micah about being like, hey, green light, keep going. But you can't tell a player's mental status of like unless you're talking to them. But I just think some of these guys, everyone knows that this 6-6 team should be 8-4 or 9-3, and like I want to fix it myself. And I think that's the hierarchy thing of like, hey, Dante, I just need you to be Malik. And Ant, I need you to be a star. And Rudy, and I think if they all kind of contribute, I know it's a Dante-specific question, but if they all kind of contribute, I think guys like Dante will really flourish because you need a man like in the preseason. I want Dante DiVincenzo to I want him to break Malik's three-point record. Like, just let it rip.
I have nothing to go off of anything I saw in the locker room or anything, but I wonder I'm pretty sure Dante's worst game was the last game, right? The second Portland game. I wonder how he felt about not starting that game.
Yeah.
Right? Like Nikhil started over him, and they kind of play the same position. And I think he thought he was ahead of Nikhil in the pecking order, I would assume, right? So there's probably I would guess that was some sort of a factor there of just like frustration, which maybe leads to pressing, because that game was just weird. Like, He definitely didn't look like the preseason version of DiVincenzo, and he didn't look at like even the regular season version, which is a little bit lower. Broadly, I'm like my kind of like take on what's going wrong right now is I think the Mike Conley and Dante DiVincenzo part of this is going to get solved really quickly. That would be, I think that ends up making sense before a lot of the other things that are going on right now. I think DiVincenzo's acclimating. I don't think he knew what his role was exactly. I guess I haven't looked close enough. I don't really recognize anything with the shot. I think he's just got to play, keep empowering him to be, a really important part of this team. You might lose him though if you start. And that's kind of a case of like, all right, if you wanted to start playing Josh Minot 15 minutes a game, like then you're gonna be playing DiVincenzo less. Part of this, I think DiVincenzo should be one of the best bench players in the entire NBA. Like literally, like top, like him and Naj should both get votes. They're that talented compared to other other bench guys. I really think so. And I just think that one's going to take a little time. Thank you.
Good question.
All right. We got a couple more here.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. Earlier we were talking about backup centers, and Luka Garza. I mean, I know he's not a superstar here, he's super weak on defense, but I feel like he's how much longer before he's even in the conversation for a backup center? Effort's definitely not his weak point, but I feel like there's an elephant in the room. We're just like, oh, who's playing center on our team now that we traded Carl? Here's the dude that will always try, but maybe he's not the highest skill. I mean, how many more years before he's even in the conversation?
I think that's a good, like, totally fair question, because it's like, if not now, then when? Because he's not going to really, he's 24, maybe 25. Like, I don't think he's going to get in better shape. Like, he's gotten in really good shape. I think he's gotten as fast as he's going to get, which is still really slow. But I think at some point it'll be interesting. I think he'll play if a big gets hurt. I really think though, like if Julius Randle like rolls his ankle and is out for a week, or Nas, yeah. I'm not sure if it answers the specific backup center stuff that we're talking about related to defense, but maybe it just gives it a different look. I'm telling you, dude, that guy is we all know this just from watching Garbage Time, but he always shoots first when we're there when they're there before the game. The guy is like literally one of the best shooters on the team. I don't think like people like know that. Like just like open gym shooting. And then that has nothing to say about his offensive rebounding or what he could do underneath the bucket. Sometimes I think with bad defenders, we go, they're a bad defender so they can never play, versus actually seeing how bad of a defender they are, right? And realizing like, oh, yeah, okay, that's not Rudy Gobert, but it's not like this isn't the reason we're losing this game. And I think with him, it's important to be open-minded to that. And they're going to for sure be open-minded about that with Rob Dillingham. Like Rob Dillingham's not going to lock people down either, but if Rob knows where to be defensively and executes that stuff, it's going to be okay, particularly if he's out there with Rudy Gobert. And if Luka Garza knows where to be and the effort is there, like, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world defensively. But they don't seem ready to show that. I think he gets a shot at some point this year because, again, to all the rotation stuff, someone's going to get hurt at some point and get an opportunity.
I love that question because we just keep doing Rob and Josh and Josh and Rob because they provide, I've called Josh like a Jaden backup, and Rob obviously has skills that maybe the rest of the guards on this team don't, even though I know he's 19. But yeah, I think Luka Garza is like tied for 10th right now in my personal rotation.
Yeah, like who's got a better like 2K rating, Josh Minot or Luka Garza? Like just as a basketball player.
Coop, Coop?
No, I mean like metaphorically, right? Like is Luka Garza worse than Josh Minot as a player?
Who deserves to in what we've seen through 12 games and the holes they have and all this stuff in rotation? Who deserves the chance first to get off the bench? Terrence Shannon Jr. or Luka Garza?
Luka, yeah.
I mean, because he fills the need.
Well, it depends what the need is. I think like if a wing gets hurt, Josh Minot's going to play, and Terrence Shannon won't play.
Right. Yeah, that's my point.
If a big gets hurt, specifically Rudy or Nas, I mean, maybe you could go like you could play a little bit smaller, but I think Luka would get a shot. It's going to be cool to let him. He's going to get an experience at some point this season to play 20 minutes in a game, or maybe a couple of games over the course of the week. And I don't know if I'm betting on it, but I'm curious to see the stress test of that because we have all just decided what Luka Garza is good at and decided what he's bad at. Kind of like we did with Dante DiVincenzo in the preseason, kind of like we did with, Josh Minot.
Oz Reed 3 years ago.
Exactly. Opportunity is huge. At the same time, though, I wouldn't be like play him over Nas. He's still pretty relatively.
Ideally, he doesn't play, but I see what you're saying. Great question.
As we have two more. Okay, we'll do these ones. We'll do these ones quickly because we're getting close. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. So I know it's really early. I love Julius Randle's fit, ideally. But when we look monetarily, between the three players, we know this year how Finch feels about Nikhil. We know how Nikhil brings effort and energy and defense in a way that no one else is right now. And given how Jaden's playing, out of the, let's say, three, knowing that Jaden's got a contract, out of the three, what two do you keep between Randle, Nas, and Nikhil?
That's a tough one.
Oh, okay.
Wait, what?
I don't think it's
Okay, go ahead.
tough.
You think Nikhil Alexander-Walker is better than Julius Randle?
I don't think that's what he asked.
Yeah, okay. Well, then
I
let's
think
go.
he said, who are the three, out of those three, who are the two that you would prioritize in the new CBA and second apron world?
Can I ask this? Because I think this is important. And maybe you could answer this.
You're going to get us to fight.
What do you think? What's Nikhil Alexander-Walker's contract next season? 20? Okay. So if it's 20 versus 30 for Randle, that's the context of this. Okay. So is your answer still that?
I mean, no. Listen,
We both got Nas in there.
Yeah, Nas
Yeah, we
has
had the little
made the
safe
list.
card over that. Yeah.
When you put it like that, if you think Nikhil Alexander-Walker gets 480, 4 years, 80 million, which at this point, depending on cap space and stuff, like he probably deserves it. I mean, like think about Nikhil on like the Nuggets right now is like their sixth man. He'd be awesome. The reason I would rather have Nas and Nikhil and keep those guys, but because of this Rob thing, I mean, Dante DiVincenzo, if you don't know what his contract is, it's like, what, 3 more years? Like, you got Ant and you got Mike still and you got Dante and all that stuff, and maybe Shannon Jr. a little bit, and Rob, who you traded up for the 9th pick overall. So I'm sad to say this, but yeah, it would be Nas and Julius because, again, if it's going to be 20 for Na and 30 for Julius, then in that realm, I would rather have Julius.
And 20 might end up, I mean, that's probably high end, right? You know, if
it's 15 for Na and 30 for Julius, then it's kind of a different conversation.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, a lot of market factors there, right? Like, who's going to be able to give him 20 or whatever? Like, I think there's a world where Nikhil doesn't get that much money. I really do. Like, he got $4 million a year after he did what he did in the first playoffs. Like, me and Jace always talk about this. Like, nobody watched Nikhil. Like, clearly before that, like, why did he only get $4 million? Like, he's doing the same stuff he's doing now. I think I might have answered that differently if DiVincenzo wasn't on the team. Because, like, I do still see a lot of DiVincenzo and Nikhil overlap. I agree. Yeah,
sure.
He just said the fit's been better there, too. I think the good news is we got time to answer that question. But it is a or the question. And it could get to a point where they get priced out and it's one, you know, right? If we were talking about that on the drive over here, I'm like, you're like, well, Nas is going to make 30 a year. Well, if Nas is making 30, I think you said 35. You know, like
I would give Nas 100 if I ran the team.
Yeah.
But I will say that that's an interesting thing as you start to think about these numbers because they matter because that's, you know, financially is kind of partly why you got to trade Cat and do this stuff. DiVincenzo's contract might be a healthy Nikhil contract, right? 4 for 48 or something like that. So if you can get Nikhil back like that, but yeah, I think that the whole second apron thing is like the least fun thing to talk about, but also like the most important thing to talk about.
Yeah, it's real. That's real. Good question. Thank you very much.
One more question.
Yeah, we'll do one more question here, and then I think they're going to start doing giveaways or something.
All right. I just want to talk about Terrence a little bit. I know we talked about it a lot.
Keep that mic close to your mouth so you can hear.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about Terrence Shannon in the last 4 minutes here, but I think he's super talented. And do you think if Jaden continues to struggle offensively that Terrence could maybe carve out 8-10 minutes? Is there a role for him this season, you think, or no?
I don't see with the Jaden thing. I mean, I just think they're pot committed to Jaden. Like, I don't. I mean, what would it take for Jaden to not be the role that he has? That's not going to change, right?
Jaden has not been good.
Yeah.
But the reason you were able to get Jaden McDaniels at pick 28 is because of his mental, the pre-draft stuff, kind of knowing a lot of people had questions. Obviously, we saw him punch a wall, but for the most part, he's been pretty good.
He had a little ball kick last
right,
year.
yeah, and he's a little bit of a lunatic, which is kind of why I trend to love guys like that. But I do get concerned where it's okay, Jaden's having a slump. Is the best way to handle that by not supporting him or trusting him? But I think they're also two separate conversations because I do think Terrence Shannon Jr. is really good. You drafted a 23, 24-year-old rookie because he can probably play now. But his one thing, he has to catch and shoot. Because in Summer League, he was great, but he's not going to get to the rim and have 14 free throws a game in the NBA like he did in the Summer League. Like, if he can, he wasn't great catch and shoot in Summer League or always in Illinois. If he can spot up in the corner and hit threes, which is something Jaden has not done.
I'm pretty down on his jumper, watching it some more. I don't think that's there yet for Shannon.
Yeah, but again, the good news is that he's like your 13th guy, right? And when you start looking at other teams, like you and I are their 13th guy. So I think they have a lot of depth, but again, I'm all in on the 8-man rotation now till the end of November. See what you got, and if that doesn't work, December 1st, I'm calling in the morning back. It's time to get to 10.
Love it. Thank you for the question. And thank you all for listening to us just ramble for a while. We'll be here hanging out if you want to come chat. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to Treasure Island and my guy, Joe, yes. Take it away.